to the game 3 and how the home court gets affected. And, I know the only thing I'm not really I'm looking forward to is hearing Doris Burke. But besides that, everything else I think is pretty cool.
That's a fair point. Welcome to Rogue Bows Basketball Series. We decided to do an earlier podcast than usual. Obviously, the NBA finals are around the corner. So we thought we'd do a little preview, kind of give a summary of the two losers in the conference finals and where they sit, talk a bit of news around the NBA and the NBL, and then call it a day. But Pro, thanks for squeezing this one in after a workout. You've got your AI data behind you there on the whiteboard.
No doubt. My coding for sure. Bogues, you got this new show coming up, man. I was pretty interested in reading about it, man. You want to talk about it for a minute, or you want to just do
it's because of you. Time? It's because the years of shit you've given me that there's too many sub-series under the Rogue Bows banner. We decided to branch out, and it's all you're doing. You're the brainchild of it.
I love it, man. I love it. Anytime I could, I could influence you to do more for the community. I'm a big fan of it.
It's not a charity, but it's the In Conversation series, so check it out. We're trying to get guests on for a long form, talking about everything going on in the world, Australia, the US, hopefully get some other people on down the line. But it was a 3-hour long one, Pro. You would have fell asleep during the first one, so
easily.
Yeah, so
I probably would show up 6 minutes late and they'll you'll
start without you.
Like I'd probably be. Yeah, you'll start without me, have some homeless guy on there or something like that, and when it's supposed to be me, so that would be great.
No, you don't like the political stuff, Pro. You start umming and ahhing when you get down that line, so we'll keep you away from those. But let's get into the conference finals, Pro. I made a tweet and said I think as far as results of a series, this was probably the most mundane, boring conference finals. When you talk about both sides, even though there were some close games, the series, I feel like, for both the East and the West was never really in jeopardy. So pretty boring to watch. But we'll start with Minnesota and Dallas. I think I had Minnesota in 7. You had Dallas in 6. But Minnesota just fell back to that old Minnesota. I don't know if it was more them or the fact that Dallas had just so locked in this series. But the confidence that I thought Minnesota were going to carry off that Denver series, I thought this would at least go 6 minimum. But credit to Dallas, man. They were great. They grinded it out when they had to grind out. They were loose when they had to be loose. In fairness, Minnesota, this is very similar to the Indiana-Boston series. Minnesota probably had control of 3 of these games at numerous parts during the game. There was a couple of games they had 7-8 point leads. But towards the end of the third, start of the fourth, pretty much in every one of these games, it just turned on its head. Game 1, 108 to 105 for Dallas. Game 2, 109 to 108. Game 3, 116 to 107, all for Dallas. Minnesota obviously get Game 4, 105 to 100, and then they get Game 5 was just awful to watch. I mean, it was just an absolute annihilation. But an interesting series from a lot of aspects. I mean, Luka elite, 32, 9, and 8 a night. Just absolutely unbelievable. Anthony Edwards didn't shoot it very well in this series. It was averaged just under 25, 8, and what was that? I think it was 7. 8 assists, but 43% from the field, 40% from 3, 75 from the line. That cleaned up a little bit towards the end of the blowout game. He got some numbers up late in that, but he wasn't great. Towns, 19, 8, and 2 assists. Naz Reid, 12 and 4. His three-point shooting stayed at 44%. Conley with 12, McDaniels with 12, and Gobert with 12 and 7. I don't think Gobert was as influential in this series as he was in Denver. But yeah, give me your summary of this series and where you think it went wrong for Minnesota.
I really do think that the Mavericks just sort of, after the Oklahoma City series, during the Oklahoma City series, Bogues just figured out how to use their personnel to just be an elite team, just sort of turn that corner. You've got two elite playmakers, 2 elite scorers in Luka and Irving, and you got elite vision by Luka as far as being able just to pick you apart. I think the rim rolls really gave them a hard time, even with Lively going out early in the series. Had to miss some time. Gafford rim rolls, and then the defense has to suck in, so Luka would make those skip passes. I think the skip pass to the corners are the most dangerous pass in the game, and to be able to hit, PJ Washington, who's hitting 47% from that left corner, being able to pick them apart. Jones will make shots. PJ Washington will make shots. Green could drive you. They just were in sync, Bogues. Anything that Minnesota tried to do to hit them, they never left script of how to play and what to do. Minnesota had some control. They were in almost every one of these games, but they didn't care if they put 2 on the ball at Luka. They just got rid of the ball early. They swung the ball around, got a shot. They were very good defensively. I just think they did their thing. And I thought Kyrie and Luka together were really aggressive offensively. Kyrie, depends on the series, went up and down a little bit as far as what he wanted to do offensively. I think he was really, just very aggressive, trying to score and try to get to his spots. And I think for Minnesota, look, Anthony Edwards, and this is a learning process for everybody. I think everybody wants to compare him to big time players in the history of the game, and I think that going through a series like this and struggling, I think getting double teamed, he really, when they sent that second defender, he wasn't as comfortable as you would think that he would be. He struggled with that. I thought he was struggling being aggressive throughout the whole game. That hurt a little bit. Rudy was up and down. I think Karl Anthony Towns didn't show up the whole series like he needs to be. They need him to be really good. And we'll talk about this after you talk about your thoughts on it when we talk about Minnesota going forward. I just didn't think Karl Anthony Towns gave enough and got enough offensively as far as his productivity throughout the whole series. For them to be aggressive and for them to really make this next step, they need a second scorer, to put with Edwards. And look, Conley's a stabilizer, McDaniel's the defender, Nasri can make some shots here and there. You got Kyle Anderson who does his thing, but they don't really have that second scorer that, when the ball gets out of Edwards' hands, it's someone that can consistently get you 25 or 26 when they need to, especially in playoffs. And I thought that, Towns really did well throughout the year. I thought he was pretty consistent, and I just don't think he stepped up enough in this series. And then Gobert gave him some problems. Like Gobert with these dumb, Karl Anthony Towns had some dumb fouls, and I think that really hurt him, getting in foul trouble, making stupid fouls that he didn't need to make. And then Gobert with some of these cheap shots that he would take for no reason. Like, I wasn't a fan. I just think that Dallas, I have them winning the whole thing. I just think that they figured out 100% of how they use their personnel on both ends of the floor to be an elite team. And that's what I thought about the series.
Yeah, Towns was 24% from three. He took some horrible ones at numerous times in that game, especially when it felt like Minnesota was still kind of there, needed a big solid possession, and he just hoist up a really random three at times or try to drive through the basket. Rudy gets, look, I got a note here that why is he the one that always gets the blame when his teams bow out? Part of it is, look, Luka, they absolutely killed him in that pick and roll. I think a tweak was needed by Minnesota to try and get Rudy just not stuck on an island having to guard Luka. We've seen that story before internationally. We've seen it when he was in Utah. And look, most guards that are good defenders struggle to guard Luka, and then you're putting a 7-footer who's generally upright, better at the rim, asking him to guard one-on-one. And look, it was a tough shot that Luka made, but I would have liked to have seen Minnesota go to like a half early blitz in those pick and rolls. I think Gafford does a decent job out of the short roll, so does Lively, but I would almost make those two guys catch it at the three or just inside the three, and then having them go and finish at the rim consistently. Like, mate, I want to see you do that for a whole night. Because they're obviously foul guys, they're not great free throw shooters, so you're putting the pressure on them. But it seemed like Minnesota, when they went to that half blitz, what I mean by that for listeners that aren't familiar is when there's a screen and roll, Rudy's man runs up to set a screen, you kind of stay up in a half double team, not a hard double, just enough to make sure Luka gets rid of the ball and make that big, be their decision maker. I don't think they put enough pressure on Lively and Gafford to consistently make those decisions. They pulled in a lot on those rolls, so then that was just an easy one-bounce swing open three. I think Minnesota should have tried to tweak that. Touching on Kyrie Irving, he was elite in this series. He was 49% from the field, just under 38 from three, 27 points. He was a series high plus minus for Dallas. So whenever he was on the floor, they were plus 7.6 better for the course of the series. We talked about he didn't have a huge series the one before, but he was fantastic. PJ Washington, still inconsistent. We'll talk about him once we talk about Boston. He needs to be much better for them to beat Boston, in my opinion. But Gafford and Lively, I think you got to put more pressure on trying to make them make decisions. If you make Luka make that right decision 99 times out of 100, he's going to make that right decision. If you make him give the ball up early, where his first pass out isn't influential on them scoring, and make those bigs consistently, make that right decision, I think you got a better chance there. Easier said than done. Where to for Minnesota, Pro? I'm interested to hear your thoughts. So you look at their salary cap situation. It's not horrible, not great, not horrible. I mean, what are they here? They're 13th. They have 166 this year, but it gets ugly next year. They're at 193, and then 200 the following season. There has been rumors about Towns being moved, as you've said many times. Who's taken that contract? He's owed $49 million next year, 53 the year after. It peaks at $61 million in 27. Rudy Gobert's on 41, 43, and 46 the following season. Conley's on a reasonable deal. He's on huge money this season at 24, but it drops to 9. Very team friendly the next two seasons. 10 million and 10.7. Edwards is obviously going to be going into his max. Naz Reid, what do they do with him, Pro? Because he's going to be coming up pretty soon. And I think he showed his value there. I'd almost be inclined, if you could flip the script and give Naz, he's 40 and try to move Towns. That's probably a better fit with Gobert anyway, in my opinion. What else do they do there, Pro? I mean, Kyle Anderson played some influential minutes for him. Was a nothing for them offensively, but I think was a solid defender for him at times. They needed defenders on the floor. Alexander Walker was in and out of the lineup at numerous times. But McDaniels, who's, going on $23 million next season, was really good and has really improved. So I think that's kind of their core. But how can they facilitate finding that second scorer? Because I think you're right. I think Towns, as talented as he is, as far as winning playoff basketball, he's probably your third option. Can tweak to a second for, a little bit of minutes in a game. But I think if he's your strict number two behind an Edwards for your offense, I think you're kind of in some trouble in this position in a conference finals or a finals. Where do you see them going with their cap, and what tweak would you make if you could?
Bogues, I think the biggest problem they're going to have is Towns is sort of clogging a lot of stuff up. And we talk about it all the time, but in reality, this might be the biggest contract. And I don't see it as a good contract. I see it as a contract that you're not just going to get off of. You're not going to get assets back for it. You're not going to have a lot of teams like, all right, let me take this on, because he's owed $220+ million over the next like 4 years or so. So, in not so many words, like next year, again, I could be a little off on this, but 52.3, 56.5, 60.7, and then a player option, in 27, 28 at 60, close to $65 million. So it's 220. Now with the new TV deals and things, and the cap's going to go up, so it takes a little bit less of a hit, but not much more. You're not talking about a guy who makes $30 million a year here, that you could sort of deal with the contract, give him a few. I mean, I would assume that you're going to have to give multiple draft assets up, which they gave all to Utah in the Rudy deal. So I don't know how you can get off this contract. I think you have to figure out a way to sort of deal with this. Now, the ownership situation is a little bit interesting. I don't really know where it's going to go. People tell me it's probably going to go to A-Rod and those, in his group. But they were talking about a lot of leaked information about them wanting to cut back and cut salary. I don't know how you do that. Like Rudy, Rudy is what he is. Like we talked about, he gets a lot of criticism. A lot of it's warranted, but he does make you a little bit different because of his his plus minus, what he can do protecting the rim, and some of the things that he does. Again, you give up so much capital on the trade to get him. Now, if you get him out the door, I think it would almost cost you money, or you would get some marginal talent back. So I think you're sort of stuck where you are, which I think could cost them Anthony Edwards in the long run. If you can't put this monumental run together again, and now you start like one round and out, like Edwards, he'll stay for that second deal, but then there's probably a lot of pressure to get some stuff done. And with the money the way it is, with the apron, how it's structured, Bogues, Naz Reid, you have to sign. I think Kyle Anderson, look, he can go money hunting somewhere else, probably get a little bit more money because they're not going to give him a lot, in my opinion. So they'll give him a little bit of money, a couple of years, I don't know, 6, 7 a year. Maybe you can get 10 or 12 somewhere else at a team that has some cap room. But I think Anderson knows that he fits and he impacts, and he could probably have a good chance of getting maybe to a second round, possibly if they make another run, maybe turn the corner and make this into a finals type team. I don't think so. I think they did really well. I thought they were really well coached. They got really good defensively. Edwards is an elite player, no doubt about it. Conley's a stabilizer, but he's getting older. So, like, at what point are you going to replace Conley? And if you replace Conley, you're not going to get a Conley back. You're going to get some guy that you draft. You got no picks. You got to have to either buy a pick, acquire a pick. You'll have some picks every other year, but it's going to be tough for them to move. It's going to be tough for them to really upgrade this roster. I think you just keep it in check. You keep what you have. With all the revenue sharing the league does, they're going to have, they'll make out on the deal. Everybody does. So I think you sort of keep this team in check. You re-sign Reed. You try to re-sign Anderson. If you don't, you're going to have to try to use some of either your exception money or a minimum to try to get a Kyle Anderson type player back, which is tough. A facilitator, a guy who can guard at very high basketball IQ, it'll be interesting. But
well, the obvious one that everyone's spoken about is New York. And looking at New York, Randall's the obvious one with the filler that you could potentially do something with. I don't know, Bogdanovic or Mitchell Robinson, someone to fill in to match those salaries. Is still a little bit short, but then you got Randall, who's got 1 more year guaranteed and then a player option the following season. It then frees them up long term for what you're talking about to say, okay, after 25, 26, Anthony Edwards, we've got some cap space. We're going to bring in a big dog with you, right? That's probably the most logical. And there's been links of towns going, and then you can kind of move off that salary, but it's hard because it doesn't match up exactly. And you just don't know what else they can do. They're pretty strong cap wise for the next 5 years.
And also for New York, Bogues, like, okay, for Minnesota, if you take on Randall, right? Let's just take a look at both sides of this. Randall, you'll take a lot of your spacing out. The ball's going to be, now you're going to have a guy who, like, for all Towns' flaws as a player, he doesn't really like dominate the ball. He'll take a lot of shots. He'll take a lot of fucked up shots. He'll take a lot of deep shots, but the guy can shoot. He spaces you out. And this is what this game's all about now. It's all about spacing the floor, stretching the defense out, forcing them to cover more of the court to open up either shooting or driving. So you got Towns who does that at a way astronomical bad contract number that it really, really caps you. No pun intended. Now you got Julius Randle who will give you more rebounding. He'll give you probably more toughness, but now he's a little different type of player. He dominates the ball and not in a great way. And I think that it doesn't open up the floor. It really sort of, it really moves the walls in a little bit of what you're trying to do. Now on the other end, if I'm New York and you're right there on a championship level team, like a team that might be able to get to the finals. And if they, if they were healthy this year, no doubt about it. Like statistically, I think I heard Brian Scalabrine say this on their Sirius show that like statistically after they acquired OG, that they were one of the best teams in the league as far as analytics, right? So, I mean, now you're going to take that team, even without Randall. You did much better without Randall, in your run than when you had him in your, rotation. So maybe you can get another team to get rid of him for 28 to 30 million, maybe take a bad contract for a year or so, or take a couple of pieces on a bad team, like trade him to like Charlotte or something like that. Charlotte ain't going to take him because of the new, of the new GM and things that took over. They're not really trying to put that on their cap, but take a team, get them off, so you take another player, you sort of deal with the players that you have now and you go forward. I just don't see them taking Towns at $220 million when you can get another player for 15 to 18 million that maybe could give you 70% of Towns versus getting a guy that you're going to have to pay 50, 60 million dollars to a year for a 2 or 3 year period, at the end of those deals. And I don't know, Bogues, if I'm New York, I'm not doing that deal. If I'm any team with usually the teams that have cap room will take that bad contract. You give them you give them 2 draft picks. They'll money launder your bad contract, but that's for like something at 20 million, 25 million, maybe even 30 million. At 50 or 60 million, first of all, who's under the cap to absorb that just to get picks? And to be honest with you, if I'm absorbing that contract, I'm not taking anything less than 72 first rounders to take that fucking whale of a contract on. So I don't know where they go with that.
Yeah, no, it's just one that was floated, was it about 7-8 months ago? Your point about Randall not fitting well with Minnesota, I totally agree. I would almost have him, you can almost start Reed with Gobert and have Randall as that gunner off the bench. But my whole thing is this wouldn't be a talent for talent play. This would be just to freeing up some cap space to try and keep Edwards around, trying to do everything I can to move the deck chairs around so then in 2 years we actually have cash to splash. Right now, you look at Minnesota's roster, this is what they have. This is what they have going forward. They cannot do they can do fuck all really, because as you said, they gave away all those draft picks to Utah. In the Rudy deal, this is kind of your squad. Unless something crazy happens, a wild trade, 3-4 team trade, maybe, but they got to try to do something, I think, because like you said, Edwards is going to grow frustrated within 2 years if they're continuously bouncing out early.
And I try not to be one-sided on this and like kill the Rudy deal and kill the Towns deal. And in some ways you can, but like if it wasn't for those 2 players, they wouldn't be in this situation of making the conference finals. Like those guys were important in their own way. The problem is the capital you gave up to get Rudy and then the contract. Everybody wants to be a Monday morning quarterback. But again, you could still make this a little bit of a run. But now you look at the West and how good the West is. Think about how good Dallas is built. Go look at Oklahoma City, how they're built. And you just look at those 2 teams right off the bat.
Yeah, Clippers will be in the mix.
The Clippers are in the mix, even though we should talk about the Clippers at some point because they're in a weird situation. But like you look at how those teams are built, you don't know where New Orleans is going to be in all this. And then you got to so now you're
Sacramento,
looking at Minnesota,
Golden
Denver.
State, Denver.
Denver's right there, right? Yeah. So like now, in a perfect world, you might be 3rd or 4th. You got all these, but like, again, this is the perfect team, perfect storm to get you to the conference finals. But I don't think it's enough to turn the corner. Like Denver, you could talk about Denver all you want. Are they, whatever? Are they done? They hit their max, but they got Jokic and they've got Murray and they've got Gordon. Like those 3 guys and plus Porter, like that team could make another run. Minnesota can too. But they got movable parts. Like you might be able to move Porter. You will definitely be able to move Gordon. You'll definitely be able to move Murray. You'll keep Jokic. So they can move some parts around. Minnesota, not so lucky.
Yeah, look, I think Minnesota, I guess if you ask them or anyone in the league, you said they make the Rudy deal, they pay Towns all this money, would you be happy with the conference finals within a year? They would say yes. Everyone would fucking say yes, considering where Minnesota's been the last decade, right? I guess in fairness to Minnesota, we got to give them another year with this squad because they've got to the conference finals. They surpassed expectations. Let's see what it's like next season. Is it a one and done next season, first round exit? Then you got to seriously start considering eating some shit sandwiches contract wise, coming back to make some move, do something. But right now, I think the Rudy and the Towns thing as of today is paid off because of the top 4 team. That no one picked to be top 4 really, not this quickly. Can they do it again next season? So we'll see. We'll watch that space, and I think that'll be the barometer at the end of next season. We'll be like, okay, where is Minnesota really at? And you just hate to see these situations get fucked up, as we've seen in so many small markets where a guy like Edwards, who's a generational player for that franchise, grows frustrated and leaves. Boston Indy 4-0. Man, we spoke about it last podcast, but I felt like Indy had control 3 out of 4 of these games. They had control and should have won. I just saw the highlight again of the Halliburton turnovers. And then the Siakam out of bounds in that game that Jaylen Brown hit the three, and you just scratch your head about, like, what the hell were you doing? Point guards, if you're dribbling the ball over halfway and it's late in the game and you're up three, do not dribble to the corners over half court. Stay in the middle of the floor so you can't get trapped. Even if Halliburton would have bobbled that ball in the middle of the floor, every chance that they get it back in a loose ball situation, do not dribble to corners at all times, point guards. Just some boneheaded plays for them. But Indiana, they were in three out of four. This should have been 4-2 in my opinion, at least, maybe even gone 7. Boston, they did what they had to do. They just kind of got through that series pretty unscathed. Didn't play their best basketball. They got through it, but I guess we'll talk about Indy now. We'll get to India to Boston later on. In this series, Siakam was their best scorer, 23 a night at 50% from the field, 20% from three. Obviously not his strength, but needs to get that clip up to at least in the 30s. Nembhard was their second best with 21 a night. He really, really showed his worth this series, like earned himself a lot of money down the track. Huge series for him. Halliburton hurt at 17 and 9. Miles Turner, pretty solid throughout the playoffs, in my opinion. Shot it really well from three, 44% in this series. Probably could have given him a little bit more inside. I thought there was some times where he was posting up and doing a pretty good job of drawing fouls on those switches, but they went away from that. Indiana obviously likes to have the open floor, but he averaged 4.3 turnovers, which wasn't great. He's a lot of times in their system, he ends up being that short roll guy and has to make the ultimate decision to where the ball goes, something that he needs to work on. TJ McConnell, take a bow. Great playoffs for him, energy guy. Awesome role player to have in your team. Every team would love a guy like that. 15, 5, and 4 off the bench for them. And other than that, not a whole lot more. Naismith, 10 a night and top in 10 a night. But Boston, pretty cruisy. 30 a night for Tatum, 30 a night for Brown, all on pretty decent clips. Tatum's 3-point percentage could be better, but there are a lot of step back cha threes, as Pro would say. Holiday 18 a night, Derek White 17 a night, Al Horford with 13. All pretty solid, pretty easy way to get through the Eastern playoffs for the most part for Boston, pretty unscathed. But Indiana, where to for them, Pro? They looking at their cap, very healthy salary cap. They have some cash to burn if they want to. That's for sure. They will have the Siakam free agency coming up. What they do with him, but they're 25th in the league as of today, 148 million on their payroll. They are 114 next season, which will put them in probably the bottom 5 of the NBA. And the following season, they only have 58 million on the books, Pro. So they have cash to spend. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with it, where it goes. Obviously, they'd love to keep that system for Siakam is a perfect system. Open floor, play a bit of 4, play a bit of 5. Miles Turner's contracted next season for 1 more year. McDermott free agent. McDonald's contracted for 1 more year. They have a lot of 1-year deals. Mathurin's still on his rookie deal, so he's there for 3 or 4 more years. Halliburton's probably the one guy they've got long term at 42 next season, 45 following, peaks up to 50 at its peak. And Naismith at 11 a year, 3 years, 33 million over the next 3. But other than that, it's pretty wide open, Pro. Where do you see them going?
Well, Bogues, I think you're talking about executive of the year. I think Pritchard and those guys, Kevin Pritchard and those guys, did a great job. I think that putting that team together, making the Halliburton deal, getting the deal that didn't get made that they wanted to do was trying to get Ayton. Remember last year they tried to work out some type of, it was like a sign and trade or something for Miles Turner. I'm almost positive something like that almost happened. Imagine if they have Ayton instead of Turner, what would have happened in the playoffs? And I think sometimes the deals that you don't make are the best deals that you have, and that you make. And look, it's very well constructed. It's a low salary. They've got their franchise player in Halliburton. I think for Siakam's got to look like what's the best route for me to A, try to get to a final, B, be able to have freedom as far as be a go-to player, someone who's respected as a go-to player, one of the better team, players in the team. And there's enough possessions that they play at a fast enough speed that he'll get enough touches, enough looks, and be able to really, try to blossom his game the best he can. He's got one of the better coaches in the league that could draw things up to make sure that he's into his, he gets the ball in places on the floor to be most successful. And don't forget, they made this run without Mathurin, in the lineup. He was hurt. And they did a great job with Obi Toppin, who was a guy that was sort of wandering around a desert with, with a blind horse. Like he was circling the drain in New York. Didn't really do a lot. It was up and down. And now he goes to Indiana. Shooting got a little bit better. Just the sort of the style of play, the aggressiveness, all that stuff came back that made him one of the top picks in the draft a couple years back. So I think that they're in a great position. They've got their point guard of the future. They've got some guys under rookie deals. Like Nemhard's under his rookie deal. McConnell's a partially guaranteed next year. I think my database has him at partially guaranteed at $5 million. I could be wrong on that. Mathurin rookie deal. They got to re-sign Toppin. They got to re-sign Siakam. They have some money. They're linked to trying to get Paul George, probably because he played there before and they have all this money. And I think Paul George is out of LA, to be honest with you, Bogues. So it's either, in my opinion, he'll probably end up in Philly, but I think Orlando and Indiana are a couple of teams that, that's probably he would look at. I don't know which one I would rather go to, either Orlando. Me being a Disney guy, I'll go to fucking Orlando all day, but like Indiana's close, so one player away. The problem is you bring in a Paul George. How does that impact Siakam?
Their offense is so good. Well, their offense was so good because they don't traditionally go to a go-to ISO guy, right? It's kind of like kick ahead, drive and kick, open three. I mean, Halliburton's probably the closest thing they had to ISO ball, but it was never ISO ball. You bring in a George, he's going to want 15, 20 touches, that kind of stuff. You know who I'm offering my money to is Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson on that team, if you're going to bring in a guy, look, I'm not saying he'll go there or anything, but I'm saying, like, if I'm going to bring in a guy that, I mean, as long as you check, you kick the tires and see that he's all right, physically they could hold up and all that. Like, as far as just being a dead eye shooter and in that system, the amount of threes they hoist up. I mean,
with Carlisle will draw up like every ATO. The guy will get as many shots as he wants, and with Halliburton, who could distribute and move the ball, and and then you got a shot blocker, rim protector, Miles Turner behind you. And, that could cover up if you, defensively, if you come in a matchup that you're getting blow bys. And then you got McConnell right there, who's,
Energy,
arguably one of the best backup point guards in the league. So they're in a great shape right now. As far as the East is concerned, look, you're going to have Boston is going to be good for a while. New York's going to be good for a while. You don't know what's going to happen in Milwaukee. Cleveland, not a bad team. Orlando's on the rise. Philly's going to be a lot better. Miami, you don't know because of the Jimmy Butler thing. And they're going to have to, again, they'll start making moves and things. Chicago's, circling the drain. Atlanta circling the drain. Brooklyn on, trying to make some moves. That's probably a team that will probably try to take Randall or somebody else to get draft picks and capital and things. But they're sort of, you don't know what's going to happen there. Toronto circling the drain. Charlotte, they're rebuilt. Washington's under the drain. Detroit under the drain. So, like, right now, Indiana's in a great spot. They're a great salary. They got their coach of the future. They've got their players that they want. They've got, they just got a good system. The fan base is back. Everything is good for them. All they got to do is sign the right guy and don't, be cap friendly. And I don't think they're going to go nuts with it. Or just sign, instead of signing a Klay Thompson, you sign 3 or 4 of those guys that they could evaluate that are under the radar guys that you could pay $10 million to, $12 million to, and then they could fit your system rather than going out and going nuts in free agency and signing one guy to almost all your money. So it'll be interesting because that owner is very, conservative with their cap. He doesn't like to overspend. So he's very cap conscious. Now you're going to have to give Siakam, I'm guessing you're giving Siakam, let me see, the average salary for his position in the NBA, average salary is about 20. He's getting 37. I would say in his block, you're probably looking at about, plus the money's going to start going up. I would say you're looking at 35 to 45 million, probably north of that to try to re-sign the guy. Now you have some decisions because now most of your cap's going to be taken. Usually what happens in this, Bogues, is he's got a cap hold that you're limited to what you can do. Usually sign your big time guy that you want to sign, and then you re-sign your own free agent because they got his bird right. So usually sign another guy first, then him, and then take care of everything else. The problem is now their room goes away real quick when you start signing guys. It'll be interesting what they do with Siakam as well as signing the next free agent. So I don't know. Maybe they just keep it intact, just like we're talking about with the Minnesota thing. And you're just like, you know what? Let's run it back with this. Maybe we'll add a couple of guys with our mid-level exception and do this and that instead of like signing these big contracts and then ballooning our salary cap.
Look, I think they do need a shot maker for late in games. That was clear. You know, this playoff series, I think the one with Boston, it was clear that late game management was pretty poor because the way they play, they're so up and down, free flowing. Once it grinds down, they really struggled at times in the playoffs to try and get good shots. But who is that late game shot taker that's also cool with maybe not touching the ball for 2 quarters just because of the way the offense is flowing? You know, Clay is that type of guy. I mean, that's definitely a good example. Is he an ISO bucket getter late? Probably not. That's more Paul George. Can you get one of these stars there that buys into that offense? I think it's going to find you eventually in that system, and you got to sell it in a way where, you know, you might not take many. You might take 5 shots in the first 3 quarters, but we're going to have to come to you eventually because the game's going to bog down. So, if you're an Indiana fan, a lot to be positive about. Even though you absolutely choked off, I think 2.5 games in that conference final series, maybe 3. You could argue. I know there were some fans that were disappointed with that, but as far as your cap goes and your future, you've got a lot of flexibility to do a bunch of shit. So you should be pretty happy. All right, let's get into the finals. Boston, Dallas. Bro, I don't know who to pick here. We'll go through our spiel. I might change my mind. I've got someone picked on paper, but this is a tough series just because there's a lot of opposites attracting in this series. The way Dallas plays a little bit different to Boston. As we've talked about, you know, Dallas playing 2 traditional bigs for the bulk of their minutes. There's Porzingis' health. He's put out a tweet saying that, you know, I'll see you in the finals, alluding to that he's going to be healthy. I can't see it this quickly. Who knows? Maybe he means later on. I don't know if you've heard anything there, Pro, but I haven't heard whether he'll be active or not. The game's we've got 4 days, 5 days, 7th in the US, 4 days till tip off, which is interesting. So I don't know. I haven't heard anything there, just other than his tweet. But that will be interesting too, Pro. If he does come back, does he start? What minutes does he play? He's going to be coming in pretty undercooked, not playing basketball since the first round of the playoffs. I think it was game 3 or 4 in the first round was when he got hurt. So all of a sudden you got a good thing rolling in Boston. You're winning games, and now you got to kind of. They need him in this series at certain times. They're going to need him. They're going to need a stretch 5 if Horford doesn't have it or whatever to try and, you know, bring a bit of energy for them at that spot against those 2 bigs that just roll you to death. Dallas look engaged, as we've said. They just the last 2 series they were in, like you said, OKC and Minnesota, it's looked like a perfectly well-tuned machine. It's just churning over, and they even when Minnesota and OKC made runs at them, the wheel just kept moving. You could just see they're just waiting. We'll be all right. We're just going to keep playing our game. They never got too shell-shocked. Boston, on the other hand, I think probably the most red carpet ride to the finals we've seen in a long, long time. I mean, Miami, they walk through that. They get a Cleveland team who probably, you know, historically probably wouldn't be a second round team if the East wasn't as bad as it was. And then they go to Indiana, and Indiana just piss on their own feet the whole series and lose that series. So it makes things very interesting because I don't think Boston have been that tested. Dallas have been much more tested, even though they kind of walked all over Minnesota. They were close games. They were tested, right? The White and Holiday acquisitions to me are just going to be absolutely key for this series. You know, you've got Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. You've got 2 elite defenders that you can throw there, can hide Tatum and Brown at times defensively if you need to. I think this series and a lot of these final series come down to which duo defends better. Is it Kyrie and Luka or Tatum and Brown? But what I mean by defends better is, can you get to an average to above average level consistently? I think Kyrie and Luka have been very good defensively this playoffs for the most part. And we spoke about that before the playoffs started. For Dallas to be successful, they got to get from, you know, Luka's kind of a below average defender in the regular season, just kind of gets through it. He got to an average, if not a little bit above average in the playoffs, same as Kyrie. The same as Tatum and Brown. They do the same thing. They coast, they float, they'll make mistakes, they'll get back cut, they'll kind of won't be fully engaged because they're so invested on the offensive end. You also touch on how will the Celtics defend Doncic. I'd love to hear what you think they're going to do. Whether Al Horford's going to be starting at the 5. What are they going to do there? Are they going to blitz? Are they just going to switch and rely on Horford? Just making him take tough shots. I definitely think we won't see a steady diet, because that'd be suicide. I think with a guy like Luka, you want to change up as much as you can. Home court, if I have to call it, I'm going to say Celtics in 7 based on home court. I'm going to call it. I think that the home court's going to get it done, and the fact they got those 2 defenders. If they didn't have Holiday, if they didn't do that deal, I would probably be going Dallas. But I think Holiday brings a lot to them defensively, a very, very good defender. I'll just touch on my concerns that I have for both teams, Pro, and then I'll let you go. My concerns for Boston are they tend to coast. They tend to coast through quarters. They tend to coast through different periods of games. They tend to coast through series. It's just they'll have a quarter where it just looks like shit. We're going to beat you eventually mentality, and it hasn't cost them, because the East, let's be honest, wasn't great this season, and they could afford to do that with the talent they had. That concerns me, because against Dallas, that's a 20-point deficit. That's not a 7-point deficit that Cleveland put on you, or Indiana. That's 20 points on your throat at quarter time if you don't come locked in. I think their offense, for the most part, is very predictable and ISO heavy at times. I think they sometimes are just too reliant on Brown and Tatum to get them easy baskets. If they're not getting an easy open layup in transition, it just becomes an ISO grind type offense. Don't love watching that from Boston. I think that that's an advantage for, Dallas defense has gotten better in the playoffs, but they weren't elite during the regular season. That plays into Dallas's hands very much. The big man depth with the Celts, where does that go? If Porzingis is playing, he's coming off an injury and heavy legs. If he isn't playing, all of a sudden you got Horford having to play closer to 40s again. You don't really have a lot of depth behind him. They're going to have to go to small ball lineups. That's a concern for me with Boston. You go to Mavs. Is it Doncic or die for the Mavs? I mean, do the Mavs have any chance in this series if Luka is not elite throughout this series? Now everyone's going to say, well, they got Kyrie. If he averages 25, 30, they'll be okay. I disagree. I think Doncic has to be elite this series for them to win this series. And what I mean by elite, he's got to continue his play that he had against Minnesota. 30, 10 and 8, they'll get it done. That'll get him a chip. Can he continue that throughout this series with White, with Holiday, with different kind of schemes? Is Kleber healthy enough for stretch 5 minutes at times? He's going to play limited minutes coming in. He's come off the injury. Is he healthy enough to sometimes even have to play some five spot just to stretch the floor and open the floor up? If Boston do kind of stymie that Gafford Lively kind of combination and really clunk it up, I think PJ Washington, as I said earlier, he needs to be solid this series and a viable third option. He cannot be as consistent as he's been throughout the playoffs. He's had good series, bad series. He's just got to be consistent 15 a night at good clips for them to win this series. So they're kind of my 2 for those 2, Pro. But give me your opinion on who you think is going to win and why, and then also give me what do they do with Luka Doncic.
I think Dallas in 6. I've had Dallas for a while throughout the playoffs. Not obviously before. During the Clippers series, I started seeing it, and then right away in Oklahoma City series, I'm like, they've got it. They understand what it takes now. They've been through enough battles. This is the second conference final. First one with Kyrie, and just sort of having 2 elite players, having the rest of their role players know what they're doing. They're very connected. I think they win in 6. Reason why is they have the best player in the series in Doncic. They've got, Doncic, in my opinion, is the best passer that ever played the game, besides maybe Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and LeBron James, as far as his vision. And the thing about, you could do whatever you want to do with Luka. And because of the vision and because he plays at his own speed, you could throw doubles at him. You could throw one guy at him, trying to rough him up, whatever you want to do, and he'll figure out the best play to be made. And the way they play, you get the ball out of his hands. The way, instead of trying to dribble through it like he did earlier in his career and early in the season, he's been getting off that ball quickly, and they've moved that ball around. It's either, into a Kyrie drive or a Kyrie drive and kick. You've got the elite rim rolling with and lob play with Gafford and Lively. You've got straight line driving with Jones and Washington. You've got Jones and Washington that can make spot up shots on occasion. Like they've been a little bit up and down. Jones has been pretty efficient throughout the playoff. For me, I just think that the vision of Doncic and Irving, their playmaking and elite scoring, their elite rim rolling, and then you flip that over, and you've got a elite rim protection with Gafford and Lively. You've got two guys in Jones and Washington that could slow down Brown and Tatum to the point where you're not going to shut them down. They're too good, but make it hard on them. So Kyrie and Doncic doesn't really have to do that. They, look, whatever happens with White and, whatever happens with White and Holiday happens as far as they're playing the offensive end. Luke has been pretty decent defensively throughout the playoffs. He's not a defensive dynamo throughout the season. That's okay. But Sean Sweeney, probably one of the best assistants in the league, has him guarding, at a decent level. So I think that the offense, as far as their vision, playmaking, and just sort of the use of their role players, and then their elite rim protection, how they use their centers. Their bench is okay. It's not great, but it's not bad. Kleber, if they can give him some efficient minutes at stretch position, can guard a little bit. If that shoulder's healthy enough to get open shots up, that's great. Hardy's been very good, very effective. Hardaway Jr. has been ineffective throughout the playoffs. He's, for the most part, has been sort of, Hardy's been taking his minutes. Exum gets a few minutes here and there. So I just think they're together. The usage of their role players has been very good. Everybody knows the job that they got to do. Now for Boston, I just don't trust Boston. I haven't trusted them all year. I think they're very good. I think they do a good job offensively. Obviously, with Brown and Tatum, they do a very good job. The problem is, my thing is, I love watching Holiday. I love watching White. I love watching Horford. Those guys grind it out. They're tough. Pritchard gives you energy. Hauser can make shots. Brown and Tatum have to figure out how to be a little bit more basic and a little bit more simple at times and just sort of move the ball, straight line drive it. Don't have to get to a step back contested shot every time. I think they just make it hard at times. When the game's easy and the ball's moving, that's awesome. And the offense looks great. Whenever they've got a tough opponent that plays them hard, that knows what they're doing defensively, then they go into step back mode. Then they go into ISO mode. Then, that's when they really struggle. I don't understand. When things work, I don't know why you go away from them. And they go away from that ball movement, straight line drives, drive, kick. Like I said, the most dangerous pass you can make in this game, today's game, is that skip pass. That skip pass from the wing to the corner. Stretch the defense out where they got to cover more ground, where you could have open shots, you could have swings for shots, you could have straight line drives off of long closeouts, but they get away from that. And when they get away from ball movement and they start doing things like just going ISO, that's when they just make things tough. They're good enough to win when they play that way. I just don't think you can do that steadily and win. Individually, they're good. It's just, in today's game, you can't play like that, especially how Dallas defends. Now, how are they going to guard Luka? Like I said, they could do whatever they want. Like you said, they're not going to have a steady diet of anything. They're probably going to put two on the ball early and force them to give the ball up. But again, you've got to deal with Irving now in the next drive. And if you even take the ball out of Irving's hands, again, they've been decent, not as efficient as they should be, but Jones and Washington and Green, Kleber, Exum at times, those guys can make shots. And they're not going off script. The only way that Boston wins this series, in my opinion, is the Boston crowd getting Irving to revert back to that old days of being in Boston. I know it's childish, but if you can because right now it's just like he's name, rank, and serial number. He's not bored. He's not doing word salad in interviews. He's not going off script. Nothing really bothers him. He could play where he's aggressive scoring. He doesn't need the ball, and he's not pouting about it. I mean, he's all about winning, and he's all about doing the right things for now, and it's been a good situation for him. if he could just block that out, which he should be able to, but you never know. There's a lot of bad blood between Boston fans and Irving. If he could just channel that out, in my opinion, they're going to be fine. I don't think, again, the passing and the size of Doncic, like if you put Brown on him, Brown and Tatum, they're not strong enough for Luka. Luka could, again,
You're not putting
handle
Brown
them
on
physically.
him. Brown, you're not putting on him. Brown, you're not putting on. I don't.
Now they said I read somewhere again. I didn't watch their last couple of meetings, but they said the last couple of times Brown's been the primary defender while they played. I don't know that to factor anything. I just read that today. So if you put Brown, he'll back down Brown, he'll back down Tatum. And my problem with the only thing, Holiday's an elite defender, but
small.
Luka's big, man. He's strong, and he'll wear you out. And you're not going to really wear him out because he plays slow. So I think the elite passing of Luka, the very good vision and passing and playmaking of Irving, and then everybody else connected, I think it's going to give Boston too much of a hard time. Porzingis, if he could play, he'll help, obviously, gives you a little bit more offense. I just don't think, I think the way Dallas is playing and the elite, again, you get the best player, and Doncic is just showing his true colors as a passer, a playmaker, a scorer, and he's just, if he could just stay out of technical foul trouble, I think, and if Irving could just sort of channel all that, because it's going to be a war zone once he steps on that floor. Remember, the burning sage, all the racist stuff that he was saying about Boston fans, the stomping on the leprechaun at half court multiple times. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think Dallas has the advantage off the bench. I definitely do. I just think that they're much deeper. If there's an injury or two, I think that Dallas can sustain it a little bit more, bar it being Luka. I think Boston need to put Luka in more action and try to wear him out at that end. Like you said, he plays at his own pace, but he's playing 40 plus. He's one of the highest usage guys, in the NBA, in the playoffs, in the finals. Try to make him guard some more things. Put him in a lot more actions where he's making decisions, and they have pretty good guards in that starting lineup. I mean, he can't hide on a Kyle Anderson this series. Like he can't hide defensively and get his legs back. And I think Dallas did a great job of that. They put him on their weakest player, and then his legs were never done at the end of a game. So that's always an interesting part of things. By the way, Trent wants to pull you up, Pro. You mentioned that Luka's top 3 best passer of all time already. He just happened to mention CP3, John Stockton, Jason Kidd.
Stockton, I might give you. Kidd, I'll probably give you. But this
top
kid,
6, not 3.
Okay, that's fine. You know what? the kid thing, I should have thought more about the kid thing. Stockton, he did have Malone, so he's a hell of a target. This kid could find them all. And you're right. I would put Kidd ahead of Doncic, especially longevity right now.
As of today, I think when it's all said and done. As of today,
you're absolutely
you're all said and done.
Correct.
You're probably going to be right when it's all said and done.
You know me, I'll shit on myself. I agree that I probably should have had Kidd. Now, one more thing, Bogues. If I'm Boston, I'm forcing Jones, Washington, Gafford to be decision makers.
Yeah,
that's one thing that those guys do not do well. I think PJ Washington to Dallas is like what Trevor Ariza was to the Lakers in 2009, in their title run. He's a guy that came from another team. He was an inconsistent shooter throughout the year, but found his niche. Remember, he's shooting 48% from that left corner. That's pretty elite. If he could,
who's that?
I remember
PJ Washington.
PJ Washington, not for the series overall. 48% from that left corner, which has been elite for them. Again, when they try to get the ball out of Luka's hands, at that skip pass from right wing to left corner,
that's all he loves to make.
Just like Trevor did for them. Now remember, Trevor shot 31% from the 3 during the season, shot 48% from the 3 throughout those playoffs and finals. So if he could do that, where he could just take a little bit of the pressure off those two, that will be elite for Dallas. But again, if I'm Boston, I don't think there's anything I could really do to Luka. I could wear him down a little bit, no doubt. Kyrie, I could, throw shit at him from the stands. But what I would do, again, Jones, Washington, Gafford are great in their roles. If you watch the film and watch them in decision-making situations, they're pretty bad. So that's something I would like. Lively in short roll will find, like if
he's better,
if you rotate up to him, he's finding a guy. Maxey, finding a guy. Like Exum probably finding a guy. Hardy, Green, Washington, Gafford, Jones. I'm
make
forcing
decisions.
those
Yeah.
guys to make plays.
Yeah, yeah. And Jones has shot the ball well as well. We didn't talk about that. Like he's shooting the 40%, which is outrageous. I think he was a 20% 3-point shooter historically, until he found his niche there in Dallas. But yeah, I mean, I agree. You got to make someone else make those decisions for their offense. That's why I said I'd almost just take the ball as much as I can out of his hands and make even Lively. I'm still comfortable with Lively making that decision for them that leads to a score, because I think he'll make a worse decision more so than Luka will. You know, like Luka's just going to orchestrate. It's an orchestra to him. He's just, hey, the trumpet, lift your trumpet up a little bit. We need some more guitar from you over there. He's a maestro with the way he orchestrates the offense. So I would try to get, easier said than done, right? They have schemes to stop that, but try to get it out of his hands, and then you hope that you throw it to a PJ Washington that's half open, and then he overdoes it sometimes. I need to make a play. So I agree. And then touching on what you touched on, there is a huge soap opera aspect of these NBA finals, more so than any other two teams that would have faced each other. You've got, the Kyrie Boston dynamic. Don't forget, you got the Porzingis Dallas dynamic. Rumors that him and Luka didn't get along, didn't have a great relationship. It was a bit spicy there. Porzingis wanted out. There was a wrestle for who the number one guy is. It was obvious who it was, but Porzingis realized that once he was gone, I think. There's also the narrative of Boston continuously coming up short. They've been to the finals over the course of the last couple of years, numerous Eastern Conference finals, and the Mavs just out of nowhere. No one really picked them to be a finals team. So there's a lot of soap opera and drama that are offered in this outside of basketball, which is good. It's good. It's a good thing.
This is a lot like, this Dallas team is a lot like 2011. Remember, I was working for Kobe at the time, and I thought the Lakers would win in 7. I thought that, look, Dallas was going to be tough, but they figured themselves out. They played Portland in the first round, almost lost, and then they just blew through, just like they blew through Oklahoma City. They blew through the Lakers 4-0. And then that's it. You couldn't really stop them. Then there was like a tidal wave going forward, and they just unlocked what they needed to. They were an okay team, but like they just found themselves in the playoffs. And I think that this is what Dallas did. And look, you know me, I'll call it the way at least I try to see it, and I'm wrong a lot. But again, I've never been a Boston fan with this. They just, for one reason or another, and I'm not saying, I'm not making stupid comments like Tatum's not a winner or anything like that. It's just like collectively, when things get tough, this team is just a very strange team. With Dallas throughout the playoffs, and since this trade was made, you could beat them. They lost games, but they never stopped fighting, and they're always together. Since they made this Gafford and Washington trades at trade deadline, this team is a different type of team that just keeps on coming. And you might beat them a game or two, but they never stop playing.
They don't beat themselves. They don't beat themselves. Boston will beat themselves. Boston will give you a quarter where they just beat themselves.
Game and a half. Yeah. There's a game and a half in every series that they quit.
100%.
They just quit.
I agree. Yeah. You got to beat Dallas. You got to beat Dallas. Are not going to beat themselves, and they've just been the most steady team over the course of the last 40 games. It's clear. It's that well-oiled machine that I said earlier, and they're ever rarely going to. They just don't panic to beat themselves. Like they get down 7, and some teams they haven't played together that much. Like their whole roster together, multiple. They haven't been together 3 or 4 seasons, right? You'll see teams that get down 7-8, panic, shoot it, Towns, come down and shoot a fadeaway 3 in transition, come down and try to put your head down and get a charge. That's what young, dumb teams do that don't have experience. You don't see them doing that. And they've peaked, the maturity has peaked super early in their kind of, and they've got great high basketball IQ guys in that squad. They're well coached, they play well together. I agree, and that's why I was kind of tough, but I just think the home court, I mean, you sold me pretty well. Other than the top 3 passer of all time, you've sold me pretty well on Dallas. So I'm almost half thinking to change my mind. But
super quick, a lot of your points I feel like come down, and you guys haven't mentioned this, but like the big thing I'm interested in seeing is the coaching battle between Kidd and Mazzulla. Like you talk about Boston's kind of pattern of like kind of just throwing away these games and things and not making adjustments. Like, do you guys think Mazzulla is ready for this stage? Because I think Kidd throughout the playoffs has probably been the best head coach this playoffs. If you look how they kind of were able to beat Denver after losing those games, like they made the right adjustments, and then the same thing with OKC, and then obviously Oh no, sorry. Like OKC, and then this
Yeah.
last series, like they run all their actions out of the middle of the floor, so you can't double
Yeah, I saw
Luka
that.
and things like that. Do you think Missoula's ready for this type of stage and is able to kind of make those adjustments?
Well, he's
against their Jason?
definitely inexperienced compared to most coaches that were in the playoffs, and that's something that Boston have known. I mean, Stevens has backed him; they put him in that position, and he's going to have to fight or flight. Like there's no excuse right now. I think that Dallas definitely have the advantage in their bench, and they have the advantage in coaching. I think Boston probably, their starting five from top to bottom, you could probably argue is a little bit better. If Porzingis is healthy, that is, at the five. I think from top to bottom, they got more talent as far as that goes, even though they got Luka and Kyrie. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Missoula does cop a lot of flack for a team that's in the finals as well, which is always interesting to watch. But they have cruised through, and they haven't faced a lot of adversity. They're going to face it at some point in this final series, and I'm interested to see how Missoula Pro reacts to some adversity. Is there a lineup change? Is there a coverage change? What does he do there?
Yeah, I think it comes down to you just got to get through it, and you got to battle through it. And the only way you're going to do it, just like a player, Bogues, like for a kid, he's been to the finals, three times. He's been there 3 times as a player, twice in New Jersey, once in Dallas. This is the 4th time going there. He's been in a conference finals.
He was actually
as a player.
I fucked this tweet up really bad. I'm just going to put it out there. He was actually, I'm trying to say he really was the coach when Dallas won it, even though he was the player. And I put the tweet out as a silly coach that Jason Kidd's the first player ever first person ever to be a player coach and a coach with the same team win a championship. And then all these people were like, what about Bill Russell? What about
Bill Russell, Tommy Heinsohn?
I was trying to make a joke about the
Pat
fact
Riley.
that it was rumored that Jason Kidd coached that team, not Rick Carlisle, when they won it, which everyone kind of laughs about.
They weren't getting your great humor.
And then I was like, fuck, I totally fucked it up. Everyone's just going at me about, you dumb motherfucker, you don't know NBA history. So I deleted the tweet and just gave up. I just waved the white flag. And anyway, sorry, do go on, bro.
Oh no, it's not. It's not fair sometimes with Missoula. Look, he hasn't been there. You could be there as an assistant. You could crush film. You could do all this and that. But if you're not there and you're not doing it in the moment in those deep playoff runs, look, he was an assistant there for a little bit, and then he gets thrown in as a head coach last year. And you learn on the fly sometimes, and you're gonna make mistakes. It just is what it is. Like when you're working with a player, it's the same thing. Like you want them to get their ass kicked a little bit, get punched in the face, and see how they handle it. And he's going to get out coached at times for sure. Like there's going to be things that Jason's Kidd's been through countless times as a player and a coach, that he hasn't been through yet. And look, his career's really young. He's going to probably have a long career in this game. And right now he'll make mistakes. I think all of them made it. I think Carlisle has made him. Pop has made him. Kerr's probably made him. It doesn't matter how good of a coach. At some point, you are this young, inexperienced coach that makes mistakes. Trent, that's an unbelievable point. Besides kicking me in the balls and telling me about the top 3 passing deal, I think that is a great point. I think that, you're going to see some times where Jason Kidd is just sort of calm and collected, as far as having that experience as a player and a coach and just having that mind. And I think Missoula is very smart at times. He's been through it as an assistant coach trying to get better, and he's a hard worker. He's all this, but he hasn't been through it yet. So there are going to be times where he's going to make some mistakes here. And I think it's up to their team. Look, they've been to, there was some number, Trent, I could be wrong, but they've been to the conference finals 8 times since 2008. They've been through some conference final deal a ridiculous amounts of times. Look, this team has been through it. Brown and White's been through it a ton. Horford's been through it a ton. Holiday's been through it. So these guys have to sort of get their coach through it at times, because they've been there. They've had experience in multiple times getting deep in the playoffs. So it'll be interesting, man. I can't wait. We complain sometimes about how the NBA is here and there. I can't wait till these guys to go at it because, Doncic, there was some stat that if he wins the championship, he's ahead of he's ahead of a bunch of these guys of, winning their first championship. I don't really care about that. Sometimes people get more into it, but I can't wait to see Doncic versus, Brown, Tatum, Kyrie, how he deals with that. It's how the role players react, how the coaches go against each other, the changes that are made and the tweaks that are made game plan wise from game 1 to game 2 to game 3, and how the home court gets affected. And I know the only thing I'm not really paying it, I'm looking forward to is hearing Doris Burke. But besides that, everything else I think is pretty cool.
It's a fair point. It's a fair point. We might lose another. We'll move on now from the final. So you're going Dallas 4-2. Is that correct?
Yeah, 4-2.
I'm going to go Boston 4-3 just to be opposite pro, but hope I can get one right this playoffs. It's been pretty awful. But speaking of commentary, JJ Redick to the Lakers, pro. This has been this got rumored early about a month ago, then the Lakers batted it back, and then it really went crazy about 2 weeks ago. All I'm saying, pro, if there is a God, please do this. I want to see JJ Redick to the Lakers. They get their little playing spot knocked out in the first round, and then JJ has to take all the blame. I cannot wait for it if it happens. But what are you hearing? You think this is a reality to keep old Bogues happy?
This is 1,000%, in my opinion, going to happen.
1,000? Wow.
Well, I don't know. Who the fuck knows? Me, like, bet against whatever the fuck I say. But I do think that, look, LeBron doesn't want a guy who's going to coach him. He wants a guy that
he tells
he's comfortable
how to coach.
with. Yeah, he's comfortable with. Sort of stays out of the way to a certain degree. Look, the only guy that ever coached him. I think Ham did the best he could trying to coach him. He probably figured out like 3 days into it that like, oh fuck, like okay, like I'm coaching the Lakers, but I don't really have truly control of this team. It is what it is. That's just the NBA. I get it. And I think Darvin Ham's a good coach. I think he does a good job. He's great with the players, and I think he's a good coach for sure. My thing is like, there's a couple of things on this whole JJ Redick deal. First, for LeBron, look, there's one guy that coached him, and that's Spoelstra throughout his whole career. He's the only guy that probably told him no, busted his ass. I think everybody else sort of knew that he was in control. Oh, David Blatt. I definitely believe David Blatt probably tried to coach him, and look how that lasted. I do think with JJ has got a very high opinion of his basketball IQ. I think JJ is a smart guy analytically. He's been through it, through it as a player, hard work ethic, organization, all that, says all the right things. And he is smart. And I think as a TV guy, I remember Doug Collins being like the number one TV guy in the game back in like 2008, 2009. And then he goes to Philly. Like, you have all these things that you say on TV, Stan Van Gundy, same thing. And then you get back into it, you try to do it, and your players are like, yeah, we ain't fucking doing that shit. So I think it's the same thing with JJ. Like, I don't care how smart JJ is. I don't care how smart any coach is. Talent-wise, top to bottom, their biggest problem is salary cap related. You got LeBron and Anthony Davis going to make a bulk of the money. They don't really have a lot of room to do anything, right? You got Austin Reeves there, signed and sealed and delivered. Great. So those are your three guys. Your quote unquote third best player is D'Angelo Russell, and he's a play buster. You don't know what you're going to get. He's inconsistent, and he's not the best locker room guy in the world, but he's unmovable because nobody really wants him. You're not going to get value back. So now you're basically stuck with basically the same team. You could rearrange the deck chairs of the Titanic, and Hachimura is decent. Reeves is good. I really like Max Christie, a young player, but they don't really play him consistently. So, like, there's not a lot of moves they can make. So JJ could have the best ATO package in the league. He could hire Red Auerbach. He could hire Bill Belichick. He could hire fucking anybody he wants as assistant coaches. And you could have the best game plan possible. And that team is going to be probably a one-round and out team. And then, like, everything's great, sipping wine with LeBron. That's awesome. But when they're like in February, when they're like 2 games over 500 or, 500 or 3 games over, and in February, you're like, yeah, we're not getting there. The blame's going to go to you. LeBron's going to start getting grumpy because, look, he's delusional like most NBA players. And no offense to LeBron James, it just is what it is. He probably thinks that he can will this team to a championship, and he just can't. And it's nothing to do with him. It's just the reality of the game, the way the West is built, the rest of the league just sort of with these superstar players that are almost impossible to stop. and they just don't have the roster. They did a great job getting to winning a championship. They did everything they needed to do, and it was awesome. The problem is, we talk about it with the Minnesota deal, whatever, like you built this team perfectly to win a championship, and now you look back and now you salary cap, and it ain't like the old school Spurs where like, Duncan would take a pay cut to get a player. The same football where Tom Brady did the same thing to get an extra receiver. LeBron's not doing that. LeBron's not taking that mid-level exception to sign another guy for $20 million. He probably should in reality, but that's none of our business. So he ain't going to do that. The rest of your roster, you can't really move to get another great player. They're not deep enough to really make a big run. Now, look, they struck out last year with signing Gabe Vincent, which I think it was a little bit of a hangover with the Miami Heat, had a great playoff series. He signs this deal. Now, he got hurt, to his credit, but I don't think he's that great. And then Jared Vanderbilt was hurt most of the year. He was sort of their defensive stopper energy guy, and he played a minimal amount of games last year. I just don't think they're good enough. I think JJ's, look, in my opinion, he probably should have held this one out, either coach the Cavaliers that has a pretty good team, or waited another year and then somebody's going to want him. Now, if on Rob Pelinka, if he's seeing this as, all right, I got LeBron for 2 more years, JJ Redick's my coach of the future. We're going to get through this LeBron phase, and then we're going to rebuild and have JJ build our team up on the coaching aspect. I could see that, but first of all, the Lakers never think
that was meant to be Darvin Ham.
Yeah, right. And there's no patience.
No.
They're gonna throw this with JJ.
Not in LA.
And and JJ is gonna take a hit with this and his sort of name. Look, I told you they go through 5 stages of this. Who's JJ Redick? Keep an eye on JJ Redick. Get me JJ Redick. Get me a JJ Redick type. Who the fuck is JJ Redick? Like, that's what this coaching thing is and this playing thing is. They love you now. In summer league it's gonna be awesome. They're gonna be like it's going to be a media campaign for JJ for president during the July, August, September. What's JJ going to do? This is going to be great lineups, da-da-da. And, genius, all that. And then in preseason, they're going to be decent. And then the season comes and you're like, oh, fuck, we're just the old-time Lakers now. Oh, fuck, where's this whole... And that's just how the NBA works. And I think, again, it's got nothing to do with JJ Redick. I think if JJ takes the right job, I think JJ could be a pretty good coach. The problem is, in TV, and look, even what we do, we think we have all the answers, but we're not there every day. We're not dealing with that shit. And LeBron is just, look, it's LeBron James. You're not going to tell fucking LeBron James what to do. It's just not, he's just not that. He's not going to back you up as a coach. He'll back you up now. He'll back you up like, whatever, but like, that's just not LeBron's thing. It's just not it. Kobe used to do that. Kobe would back Phil up. MJ would do that. It's just a different time these days. You don't have a lot of players that back their coach up. Edwards is sort of like that a little bit. Like, he'll back his coach up. It seems like, but like not a lot of these players do that. But look, it's you roped in because you get to coach the Lakers, and that's a big deal. But I think it's going to be a disaster, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be, you're going to be taking a bath in mediocrity.
I hope it's 1,000%, as you say, because I want to watch that shit with popcorn. Yeah. And you got to factor in all this, the Bronny James thing as well. So that's one thing we forgot to mention. But last one, NBA-wise or WNBA-wise, well, there's 2 things, actually. We can talk about the Caitlin Clark thing is just blowing up. Is it Angel Reese? Is that a rookie class competitor? I mean, just delusional with the stuff that she's saying, just absolutely crazy. I mean, there's a lot of backlash for Charles Barkley and a few other people who have basically called all the other women, stop being so petty and jealous and all that kind of stuff, which I agree with. It's obvious that she's been put up as a star already, and they wanted to earn it, so they're going at her, and a lot of back and forth. And for Angel Reese to think that, comments today or yesterday around like she's not the only reason people are coming, it's me as well. It just reeks of jealousy and snipiness, and I think most people out there that have tuned in, myself included, have tuned in to watch Caitlin Clark play. I know you follow the WNBA and you have clients there, so you're a little bit different pro, but I never really watched women's college basketball, and I tuned in to watch a final because I wanted to see what all the hype was all about. So to see her copping everything that she's copping, I think she'll be a better player for it in the long run. But it's just so bad. I think that, you know, I think the WNBA players somewhat are shooting themselves in the foot with all this. I think they really are. I think it's a net good for everybody. Yes, she's going to be the LeBron of your league as far as namesake and star power, but that's kind of the tide's lifting for all of you, though. You got chartered flights for the first time. The level of professionalism, the way you're getting treated is much better. Crowds are much bigger because of it, you know. So I think it's so hard to watch when the WNBA is being kind of the doldrums for so long, had so many issues, still has issues financially and whatnot. To finally have a positive source of it. Now you can debate whether people say it's a race thing. It's because they finally got a white star. I'm not getting into all that shit. She can play basketball and she's a gunner. She's fun to watch. Black, white, pink, or purple. Right? Don't care about any of that. Don't care about sexuality. Don't care about religion. Can she play basketball? Don't care what she looks like. She's a price of admission player. In not just WNBA but in basketball in general. Right? So to watch all the snipiness, I think it ends up hurting the WNBA more than it helps. So it's just shitty to watch, bro.
Yeah, it really is an issue. And to be honest with you, it's getting talked about way too much. You know, everybody's got their take and all that, and I guess we got to add to that. But I
Best
think
was
the
Perkins.
WNBA.
Did you see Perkins, bro, by the way? He came out and like called out Barkley and all that, saying, you cannot use those words and the jealousy thing and the snipiness. You should not use, like, bro, like, you have to read a dictionary before you went on air, brother. Relax. You know, like
but you know, the whole Perkins Barkley thing is great.
Yeah,
Barkley goes at him, and
really good.
Perk gets all fired up. But the problem is, Perk will change his view 180 degrees in a week. Like he'll go at like this is totally wrong, and then he'll like go the other side about
it's
10
pending
days.
The Clutch email that he receives, the email he subscribed to from Clutch,
without question. My idea with this, and look, no one supports that league better than I do as far as like calling it up and down when it needs to be called up and down. The problem that the WNBA has, and it's not 100% of the league, but it's about 75 to 80% of the league. They're very delusional, the players, as far as what the league is. The league is compared to the NBA in like 1955 and 1960. They've got a nice little product going, a few really good players that play in it that are worth the price of admission, but most of the league isn't. It just is what it is as far as people putting a lot of money into it and going into it. Same thing with the NBA in the 50s and 60s. You have some players making decent money, but you're not turning a profit, and they want to shoot themselves in the foot by saying things like, oh, you know, we should make it the same as NBA players. We need to be doing this. We need to be doing this. And they've got this chip on their shoulder. And instead of having this chip on their shoulder and saying, you know what, for the betterment of the league going forward, we need to come together and not let this stuff get to us and just play basketball, do the best we can, continue to have these young players that come in the league, elevate the play of the league, which would elevate the pay, would elevate some of the things that we're doing. But we don't deserve these things yet. We want these things, but we don't deserve them. Like they shouldn't be flying charter. Yeah, in the best world, you know, in a dream world, yeah, for sure, perfect world, get them a charter. But we talked about it before. It cost them $75 million over the next 3 years to fly charter. It doesn't make any fucking sense. You're not making money. It's sort of like the business movie pass where they had that fake money coming into their business and they just keep blowing through money. And that's what it is. It's a scam. Like you just get all this manufactured money that's not really real out of their BRI. And that's a problem. Now, Caitlin Clark itself, look, she's a superstar. I don't like crown on people either, like right off the bat, but she's going to be a superstar, you know, where maybe she's not there today. You know, Sabrina Ionescu, like, probably one of the best players in the league right now. It took her a couple of years to sort of take her bumps to do that. But like the pettiness, and look, I think as a society, we're petty. I think because of social media and everything's in front of us, I think we're all jealous of each other, right? And I think that these players that think they're better than they are, look, most NBA players think they're better than they are too. But like to this effect, that why aren't they doing this for me? Well, they're not. This isn't an equal opportunity league. You're either a media darling and you have talent, or you're not. You know, it just, you can't do anything about it. But you can't shoot your league in the foot where this, you know, there's a lot of money coming in this league because of her. right? Do I want it because of Angel Reese and all these other players? Yeah, great. But it's not. It's just not. Like there are some really good players in the league, and she's bringing it financially. They might be bringing it on a talent level right now, even probably ahead of her, because she's not winning games right now. She's not putting up great stats. She's not putting up great shooting numbers yet. But she's got to like take her hits. She's got to get punched in the face and then just sort of deal. Well, not actually literally and figuratively, right? But she's got to take her bumps and she's got to move on from it. Now, as far as what she should be doing to deal with it, look, her teammates should be backing her up when she gets hit. Yeah, no doubt about it. But look, with Michael Jordan, look at what he had to deal with back in the 80s, getting crushed, people killing him. Now, they killed him because those are the rules and it was a much different game. But like, she needs to hold the line and say, look, I'm going to get my ass kicked because there's a lot of jealousy, there's a lot of pettiness, and I just got to keep going. To be honest with you, like, there should be a time where she starts swinging if somebody takes a really bad hit at her. You know what? Fight back a little bit. But
well, teammates definitely need to step up. I think that was poor when she got pummeled. Someone's going to run in there.
Her coach, her coach needs to wake the fuck up too. Like, that's her star player of the league, of her career. And she's got to back her up a little bit. But look, this pettiness, it is what it is. This is a society we've built on. But this league is very delusional. Look, the league doesn't deserve the money it's getting, right now, as far as the money that they want and the stardom that they want. They don't deserve it. They don't have the money. It's not in their pot. They don't draw yet. Are they getting to a good spot where that max contract can go up and some of these things can go up? Yeah, it's great. But like, if you keep on complaining about it and not really doing a lot with it, where you're generating all this other income, she's it. And there's a couple of really good players that's going to come into the league in the next couple of years that's going to continue to grow this league. But it's probably not going to get to a point for the next 15 years where it's really good right now, but they can't shoot themselves in the foot. I remember in Memphis, we went to the Martin Luther King Museum. And I remember it's a great museum. And I remember as a team we went. And I remember one of his speeches to his people that was going to go into diners and things like that. And they said, look, you're going to get yelled at, screamed at, every name in the book. You're going to get slapped. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. You don't react. You're stone-faced. This is for the greater good. But if we react, and we do something out of character, it's just going to set us back. We got to keep moving. We got to hold the line and move forward. And that's what these girls got to do. Women got to do. They got to hold the line, move forward, protect the player, protect everybody. But like, if they want something, they want this. First of all, none of these players are going to really get it. It's going to be 10, 15, 20 years down the line. But if you shoot yourself in the foot in year 1, or year 2 with this, what are you doing? It's just so stupid.
It's just like I said, they're hurting themselves. The league's finally got draw cards that are making waves outside of their league. That's really important. They got generational type talent coming through. Yeah, that have people that don't follow the league or follow basketball actually chiming in and saying, "Oh, well, that's amazing performance. I want to watch that." So to shit on that. And there is some hatred there. You can see it clearly with her being targeted and whatnot. So her teammates need to step up as well and help her out. But on a segue to that is there is the Unrivaled League, a 3-on-3 women's league starting in January, which is the off season of the WNBA. It will be the highest per average, highest paid women's sport in the history of women's sport. Reportedly, that's Cham saying that. It's going to be, they're all going to, on an average salary basis, it's going to be the highest paid women's sport in the world, in history. 6-team league, first 30 players signed, get equity ownership in the league. A bunch of heavy hitters have invested in the league. I read it could be 3-on-3 full court, which I'm scratching my head at because that might be very, very interesting. It's full court to have some pretty good conditioning, but paid more than they're trying to obviously keep girls from going over to Europe or Australia to play in their off seasons, which they're saying they shouldn't have to do if they're professionals and whatnot. Some names like Megan Rapinoe, Alex Morgan, Carmelo Anthony, Steve Nash, Michelle Wee West, Ashton Kutcher, head coach from UConn, Gino. How do we say that? Arima. Ariama. So your boy, who are you talking about?
Gary Vaynerchuk.
He's
my guy.
So
it's the only guy I care about.
But it'll be interesting to see how that goes. So we don't have to get into that too much, bro. But it is it's nice that they have something else brewing outside of their own league. If they think their league's not paying them too well, let's see how long that lasts for. But
I think it's Bogues. I think it's going to be, during the winter time, so some women don't have to go overseas to play.
Correct.
So it's,
Off season of the WNBA, so they don't have to go to Australia or Europe, which is a good thing. You know, I think stay home. But I rate 1,000 fan capacity when where they're going to play. So obviously a huge TV product. So we'll watch that space and see how it goes. Finally, just some NBL news. Carmelo Anthony has joined the NBL as an ambassador for the Next Stars program. So along with Kenny Smith, I guess, receives an equity in the future NBL team as well as part of that agreement. So it's good to have a big name involved in the NBL. Any press is good press. It got some good traction over there on SportsCenter and whatnot. And Craig Hutchison reportedly selling the Perth Wildcats, which is interesting. He has received a $40 million offer. He bought the team for $8.5 million back in 2021. He has received an offer from a Cats, I think it's a Cats business person that's a pretty big fan there. 40 million is great. It's great for Sydney Kings.
That's crazy.
It boosts our number up significantly if they're worth 40, but interesting to see. I know there's a lot of Cats fans out there that'll be popping some champagne at hearing that news. It hasn't gone through yet. Was only leaked because his company that invested in the Wildcats is a publicly listed company, so had to get put out towards shareholders. It got leaked last week, but 40 million is great for the league for that valuation. Perth generally do a very good thing. And shout out to Perth Wildcats fans. I attended a game there as a fan last season and was very impressed with the way they go about their night. Other than the constant music, it was probably my only gripe, but I'm a gripe against that in any arena. I feel like they run a very, very nice night with the way they engage with their fans. The food and beverage product was very, very high level. I just really enjoyed the way they went about it from a business aspect. So just thought I'd give them a big thumbs up. So for our Useful or Useless Pro, there's thanks to our friends at NBA.com and John Schumann, they've put together 24 stats for us leading into this NBA Finals. So I'm going to get you to get your pen out, and I want you to jot down your three that you think come to play the most out of these stats that we're going to read out. Not useful or useless, just give me your top three. The basics: the Celtics are the first team in the last 28 years for which we have play-by-play data to statistically be the best team in the regular season in each of the first three rounds of the playoffs and going into the conference finals. So that's one. Two, the Celtics have outscored their opponents by 9.9 points per game from three-point range, by 4.1 points in the restricted area, and by 6.1 points on free throws. These are the best differentials in the playoffs. Luka Doncic has averaged 28.8, 9.6 rebounds, 8.8 assists. If he maintained those numbers, he'd be the third player to average at least 28, 8 and 8 in at least 15 playoff games, joining LeBron James and Nikola Jokic, both done over the last 10 years. The Mavs are the only team in the last three postseasons with multiple wins. They're 2-3 in games they trailed by at least 17 points. The Celtics, meanwhile, are 10-0 in games they led by double digits. So once they get up, they don't lose. That's an interesting one. The Mavs, what's this one? In the 22 years since the first round series changed to best of 7, the Celtics 6-2 at home, 6-0 on the road. The Mavs 5-3 and 7-2 are just the 5th and 6th teams to reach the finals with a better playoff record on the road than they had at home. That's interesting. Celtics offense, they rank first in field goal percentage in the paint in the playoffs, but last in the percentage of their shots that have come in the paint, bro. So they're the best paint shooting team. They just don't get there enough. They've taken 47.4% of their shots from three-point range, the highest rate in the playoffs by a healthy margin, and tick higher than their league high rate in the regular season. Jaylen Brown has shot 97 for 149, 65% in the paint, the best mark among 16 players with at least 100 paint attempts and up from 60% in the regular season. Peyton Pritchard has shot 20 from 44 from 3, 45% for three-point range, second best mark among 72 players with at least 25 three-point attempts. Drew Holiday and Derek White rank second and third in catch-and-shoot three-point percentage among 45 players with at least 25 catch-and-shoot attempts. Jason Tatum has shot 20 for 60 on pull-up two-pointers, 33%, the worst mark among 21 players who have attempted at least 25. Celtics defense, Boston's opponents have attempted just 14.5 free throws per 100 shots from the field, which would be the lowest opponent free throw rate in NBA playoff history. The Celtics' three opponents have had 3 of the 4 lowest free throw rates in any series in NBA history. So no, they just don't get to the line when you play the Celtics. Only 18% of their opponents' 3-point attempts, the lowest opponent rate in the playoffs, have come from the corners. They also have the lowest opponent rate, 21% in the regular season, when the Mavs were just 4 for 16 from the corners in their 2 head-to-head meetings. They rank second in defensive rebounding percentage, 77%, and have allowed just 8.3 second chance points per game, the fewest for any playoff team in the last 7 years. Mavs offense. In the conference semifinals, the Mavs scored 18.5 more points per 100 possessions than the Thunder allowed in the first round. In the conference finals, they scored 11.7 more than the Wolves allowed in conference semis. They were the biggest jumps in each round. 15, the Mavs led the playoffs with 4.6 corner three-pointers per game and 34% of their three-point attempts coming from the corners. PJ Washington leads all individuals with 28 corner threes, 5 shy of Bruce Bowen's record of 33 in 2007, while Derrick Jones Jr. is tied for second with 17. That's an interesting one. They've retained 31% of available offensive rebounds, the 4th highest rate in the playoffs, and up 25% from the regular season. That's been the biggest jump in offensive rebounding percentage by a wide margin. Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving rank 4th and 15th in usage rate among 52 players who played at least 250 minutes. These marks are down from 35% and 27% in the regular season. So they've actually had less usage in the playoffs, which is kind of intriguing. Doncic leads the playoffs in both assists on three-pointers, assists on dunks. The 49 assists on dunks are tied with Draymond Green in 2019, 22 games played, for the most in 28 postseasons, which have play-by-play data. Mavs defense, Dallas opponents have shot 51.1 in the paint, and with that being the 3rd lowest opponent mark in the playoffs. Opponents have shot just 38 for 84 at the rim when Daniel Gafford has been there to protect it. That's the best rim protection amongst 17 players who defended at least 50 shots at the rim. Lively has the 3rd best mark at 35 for 71. That's 49%. That's layups, basically. Their lineup with Lively in Gavitt's place has allowed just 98 points per 100 possessions, the best mark among the 8 lineups that have played in the 100 minutes in these playoffs. Opponents have shot 20 for 68, 30% against Maxi Kleber, with the expected field goal percentage on those shots being 49%. That's the 2nd biggest differential among 106 players who have defended at least 50 shots in the playoffs. And finally, who's on the floor? Tatum leads the playoffs in cumulative plus minus, with the Celtics having outscored their opponents by 141 points with him on the floor. The Mavs have been 27.6 points per 100 possessions better with Irving on the floor, which is a plus 8.2. Then they've been with him off the floor, minus 19.4. That's the biggest on-off differential among 52 players who played at least 250 minutes in the playoffs. And finally, Jones has averaged 31 minutes in the playoffs, up from 23 in the regular season. It's the 2nd biggest jump amongst 76 players who have played at least 8 playoff games. Tim Hardaway Jr., 26 minutes to 13, and Dante Exum, 19 to 13, have seen the 2 biggest drops amongst those players. Bro, what do you got? Give me the top 3.
My top 3, Bogues, are the Celtics being the best in the regular season and playoffs. What was that first stat you gave me?
Yep.
They're the best in every round or whatever. What?
First team in the last 28 years where they have play-by-play data, where they've been the best team in the regular season in each of the first 3 rounds of the playoffs.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so that's one.
Okay, that's one. The being down multiple games, down 17 or more, and then the road versus home. I actually had the road versus home record and both teams. Better road record than home record. Is that
Yep.
sort of
Correct.
accurate?
Yep.
And then actually the one that was I was floating around was that free throw rate was pretty interesting. Where they were the Celtics were allowing, as far as free throws, either their foul rate or free throw rate was really low. But that's sort of outside the realm. Those first 3, Celtics being the first best in those 3 categories, the first 3. The multiple being down 17, and then the road versus home in the playoff record.
Yeah, I mean, the Celtics defense, Boston opponents have attempted 14.5 free throws per 100 shots from the field. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
One of the best, in any series in NBA history. So if they don't foul and put Dallas to the line. And Dallas are, Luka does foul hunt at times, so does Kyrie. They do a good job of getting to the line. They obviously got Biggs rolling to the rim. If they can clean that up, Boston have a chance. Any fact or fake
Hell
news for us?
no. We've been here long enough. And
All
you know
right.
what? Like, I wanted to talk about Boston if they don't win it, but like, let's talk about it if they're down. If they're up, I don't even know why
see.
we'd talk about it.
We'll probably do a
So
wrap
let's
up at
wait.
the end of the series. Pros 4-2. I'm 4-3. We'll try to wrap up once this series is over and just do a season recap of things. But appreciate all the support on the podcast for everybody. And hopefully it's a good one, Pro. Hopefully it's none of this 4-1 bullshit that we've seen in the last two
I hope
conference
not.
finals. So
I hope not.
thanks, man.
All right, brother. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. See you next time.